people are starting to come in.
Welcome, everyone. We'll just let everybody come into the session here. We're just let everybody in, and they're starting to flow into the session now. So looking forward to having our session done today. I'll just wait till everybody has a better chance to get in. That's great. Well, I'm Rick Sterling, for those of you that don't know me. You can see Troy Sawyer down here, and it's not his smiling face today.
Sorry, no camera today.
His camera's not working today, so Troy won't have his camera on today. But just a few notes. You also see Elizabeth on here as well. Liz is a longtime professional in our space on the capture side and the digitization side of our space, and we're really happy to have Liz do a session for us today on that topic. Seems to be a really important topic across the country. For those of you that are on from the East Coast, I saw some of you in person last week, so I'm really happy to get a chance to do that. Maybe a little quick discussion on the IM Canada Connect sessions that we do. Background history during COVID, Western IM decided to do some sessions called Learn With Us because we weren't getting our education Canadian content across the country during COVID. So we started that out, and then after about a year or two of that, we also decided we needed the chapters, the ARMA chapters across the country, to be involved more in the situation. So we started a new series called IM Canada Connect, and that is a series whereby the chapters in Canada put content forward for us to see as a group across the country, Canadian content, and it's been really successful, and everybody is always really happy about the sessions. I want to call out Donna Malloy as one of those people that I trust to help me on that particular side a lot. Donna has brought forward a lot of content out of the Edmonton chapter, actually, to give us sessions for the IM Canada Connect. Western IM, of course, supports this by putting up the webinars on an ongoing basis, and Troy offers his time to make sure all that works correctly. So I'm just going to leave it in Liz's hands here to introduce herself. I've known her for a lot of years. Actually, we go back more than a few years, Liz, in the space you're in. So looking forward to your session myself. I'll let you introduce yourself and get on with your session today.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Rick. I appreciate this opportunity. And welcome to everybody. I hope that you're all excited to learn about digitization today, and also looking forward to a beautiful long weekend-ish coming up. So my name is Liz Carton. I'm the Director of Operations with Consentia. Consentia is a digitization company. We do a lot of data management. So I'll share a little bit about them. They've been in business for over 50 years. In the early days, it was all about creating microfilm and microfiche from paper documents for our clients. But as we rolled into the 20th century and technology advanced, so did the service offerings from Consentia. Known at that time as critical control solutions, we began to see the transition away from film and fiche and migration into digitization. We even began to do projects to digitize film and fiche that we had created for our clients, so it kind of became cyclical for us. Every year, Consentia creates millions of images, new images for our clients, and to support their modernization initiatives. So I'm just going to share my screen. Right. Is everybody able to see?
It looks like it's still loading up. Yep, there you go. Good.
Perfect. Okay, let me see if I can get. There we go. Awesome. All right, so come to the slide here. So again, digitization, Consentia's been in business for just over 50 years. We're locally owned and operated in Edmonton. We estimate that we've scanned over the 50 years over 1 billion images and completed over 100,000 projects. So what are the drivers for businesses to do digitization? When we speak with organizations, we hear a number of main drivers for digitization. Although digitization projects do have an upfront cost, over time, it offers cost reduction not only in real estate, but also in labor costs. So there's a lot of benefits. You don't have time that your employees are needlessly wasting looking through physical files in a file room, or worse, in a storage room full of boxes. Digitization provides ease of access to your critical information, improving your employee experiencing by minimizing that frustration and allowing them to focus on the key tasks, and elevating your customer experience by speeding up response time. In this era of hybrid work and remote working, a lot of top talent is looking for opportunities that have remote or hybrid work options. By having your information digitized, your records digitized, you're able to attract this top talent and be in sync with the market needs. Other drivers can include environmental benefits, so being friendly to the environment, less paper, and then less cost in paper and printing needs, regulatory compliances, and future planning and business continuity. So if there's an issue on the site, you can actually access all the information and there isn't a delay in business. Okay. There are a number of different services that are for digitization. So we touched a little bit on paper conversion and microfilm and microfiche conversion. In the film realm, there's also aperture cards, photos, slides, negatives. So there's a lot of different type of media, videotapes, audio cassettes, depending on the type of project. We also have transcriptions that need to be digitized or need to be completed. And all of those fall under the digitization services. Especially microfilm and microfiche in this day and age, it's quite critical to get those digitized, and we'll talk a little bit about why just ahead. So the process of digitization, and we'll talk about paper first. So when we start a project, there would be, if we were doing it on site, or if you're engaging a third-party vendor, there would be identifying your project scope, creating a file inventory or a box inventory so that you have a clear idea of what the project is, packing and labeling the boxes, and then the transportation to the facility. So that would all happen before the actual digitization project would get underway. From there, once it arrives on our facility, we do prepare the documents. So that's removing paper clips, staples, unfolding corners, bent corners, making sure that Post-its aren't covering information, making sure that the pages are all facing the same way, inserting patch sheets. So the scanners that are used by most vendors are high-speed scanners that separate the documents or the images so that they can be separated by the document or the file folder or however you're desiring for it to look at the end. This is something that if you're doing it yourself too, that your team members would need to do, because putting it into a scanner without having it properly prepared won't get you the results that you need. It has a risk of missing information if pages are stuck together, things like that. So it's very critical. I always say that one of the most important tasks for the process is the prep process. From there, images or the papers get imaged through a high-speed scanner. So typically we have somebody who is sitting at the scanner, monitoring, watching for those misfeeds, watching for paper jams, making sure that everything is going through. The images are popping up, so they're keeping an eye on that to make sure that that there isn't something happening where the pages are blending. So there's somebody doing that process. Once it's imaged, there's quite a few steps before it's ready to actually be used. We have a check in place, so we would name the document or name the file and create, and that's doing the indexing for it. And then making sure that it's foldered or structured the way that the client is wanting it. That way, when it goes into your repository, it's going in the structure that you're hoping for. We review the images for quality. So we're looking for if it's too light or too dark, if it's skewed, if the image has been cropped or cut off. And at that point in time, it's 100% check that I know that we're doing, and most of our other competitors in the marketplace are doing as well. And making those corrections at that point in time, doing rescans and inserting that new image into the place where the image is that isn't quite of the right caliber. We can also make adjustments on the software that we're using in order to make sure that we're getting the most legible and the best quality of image that we can find. From there, we go to our quality assurance process. Our quality assurance person would double check that the indexing was correct, spelling was correct, the documents are labeled the way that they need to be. From the box that they would be working on, they would select a certain amount of batches for quality assurance. So that's where they actually take each page and they do page by page match up with the screen to make sure that every page that is in the batch was captured. If they see a certain threshold or they see that things are missing, they'll rescan and they'll do a further quality check. Each contract or each project that you have may have different requirements for quality assurance. There are standards with CAN-CGSB that a 10% audit page by page would need to be completed in order to be compliant. But we do have some projects that we've worked on where they've required us to do 100% audit on the boxes just because of the criticality of the documents and the records that we are scanning. So that's something that you would decide when you're setting up the scope of your project and work with either your team or your vendor in order to make sure that you're getting the quality assurance that you require. Once we have completed that, when the rescan is complete for the quality assurance, it kind of goes back into the quality control stage where it gets checked for the scan to make sure it wasn't too light or too dark and the rescan wasn't cut off. The indexing gets checked to make sure that it's falling in the right place. So doing that step makes sure that if we're recapturing another image, that the image is captured in line with the expectations for the project. Once quality assurance is completed, typically you have to export the documents out of the system and prepare them to go to your client or prepare them to go into your RM system, depending on what you're using. A lot of organizations are choosing to use SharePoint. I think in the last ARMA conference we were at, they said 95% of organizations are switching to SharePoint. So definitely something to keep in mind, what structure and what it's going to look like, where it's going once you do have it completed. We'll do questions near the end, but I'm hoping that we covered off that paper digitization enough that it was kind of clear for there. speaking about the other types of digitization, so microfilm and microfiche are probably the main types of other media that we see for digitization. Rolls of film, there are a lot of organizations that created rolls of film in the 70s, 80s, 90s. I think we were even doing some in the 2000s for organizations. And they're, because they can hold a lot of data, they were seen as really kind of the way to go at the time. Unfortunately, as a lot of organizations have found out, although fiche and film have 1,000-year lifespan, that's if they are held in climate controlled areas and they are only touched with kit gloves, and they're very well taken care of. When in reality, we know that there are a lot of organizations, it's in a back room or a file drawer, and they don't have that level of care and protection that would be required to have that. So what we're seeing now, and we've seen with some clients in the past couple years, is that their film and their fiche are starting to deteriorate. What happens when it does deteriorate is there's kind of a scent that can happen. So if you have a large film collection and you walk in the area and it smells like vinegar, probably it's starting to deteriorate. We worked with a client whose film was starting to deteriorate. So on the left-hand side, there's a black machine that I'm showing. And that's one of the options for changing, converting your rolls of film into digital images. What would happen as it's deteriorating is when it was being pulled through, the film would actually stretch and distort the images as it's getting older. And this can cause a lot of issues with actually capturing the information that's in those. If it's to the point where it's really stretching and causing issue with the image that's being captured, we would have to move, or your service provider would have to move to doing a image by image capture for the rolls of film. Rolls of film can capture they usually have about 9,000 images on them. So you can imagine that would take a lot longer than it just rolling through. On the right-hand side, I have one of the latest and greatest tools for fiche conversion. So fiche conversion, a lot of times you're doing it by hand. Some of you may already have equipment where, or you may remember going to the library and getting one of the cards and sliding it in and being able to kind of scroll in and find that little square that has the information you're looking for. Some organizations now have machines that you can put in a stack of fiche in the jackets. It will digitize all of that fiche, capture the image. The quality and the capability of these programs, this equipment, is much more improved than the past. Previously, OCR on fiche and film, it wasn't really possible. It wasn't very accurate. But with the new technology that's coming out, it's something that is able to be applied. And depending on the quality of the fiche and the film, there are opportunities to actually have OCR applied to fiche and film, which is very exciting. We get asked about that a lot, but definitely harder to come by. And I know a lot of organizations, their machines are older and getting to end of life, and there aren't a lot of organizations that supply this and supply these types of machines, because most organizations have moved away from film and fiche. So we are seeing a push from a lot of organizations to digitize all this information while they can still access it. The slides and photos and oversized blueprints, everything like that is also stuff that gets digitized. All different types of media. When we're seeing videotapes and audio recordings, I know we do a lot of work with First Nations that are trying to capture those records before they can't access them. A lot of organizations have those kind of meetings or information that they just need to make sure that they don't lose. So very critical to get those pieces of things captured so that you have that information. So what does it look like if you're going to do it yourself? And so what to aim for and what to avoid. I want to share with you a story about a client that reached out to us asking for some help with regards to digitization, and we gave them a quote, and as I mentioned, costs upfront for digitization are a little pricey, and they determined that they wanted to take on the project themselves. So they did. We thanked them for the chance to win their business. And about 3 months later, we received a phone call from that insurance agent, and they asked for help. They reached out and said, "We need your help. We have a problem and we really need your help." And so we tried to dig into what the issue was, and the client said, "Well, we did our digitization. We had a summer student come in and do all of our scanning. And it's been months, so we destroyed the records, the originals. But when we look at it, we only have page 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. So when the person was digitizing, they didn't realize they needed to scan and duplex. They didn't realize that they needed to scan the backs of the pages. So every record that this insurance agent had was missing the back page. Unfortunately, at that point, we said there's not a lot that we can do because we didn't scan it. We don't have copies of it. And if it wasn't scanned in the first place, you don't have copies of it. So the insurance agent actually had to go through every single file, every single client, and get them to re-sign every single document because they didn't have the copies anymore. So it's very important when you're looking at approaching things on your own that you're very thorough and very careful. We've seen a number of organizations take this approach. They'll hire a summer student for $16 an hour and they can scan everything, and it seems pretty simple. Perhaps, but you need to make sure you're covering your bases. In order to use a digital copy in court as the official record, you need to have the metadata audit trail. In this, you cannot have one person who has completed every single task in digitizing that record. There needs to be an alternate person or people in that audit trail because there needs to be a showing or a way to prove that one person could not have manipulated that record. Each stage of the imaging is required to have that indicating time, date, operator, and machine, and make sure that your process is aligned with the records that will be used, what the records will be used for, and if they meet the standards. So do they need to be CAN CGSB? Are you just digitizing, personal records and it doesn't really matter? You don't need to worry about that. It's very important that you understand the need for the type of record that you are digitizing. It is critical that a key resource performs an audit early on. So our process is to do 100% audit on the first box, so the entire box gets 100% audit, like we were explaining. And that's to ensure that everything's being captured, the machine does, like the calibration for the machine is good, that there aren't any setting issues that are problems, and that pages aren't being deleted or skipped. Uncovering issues later on in the project by doing that audit later on, halfway through, can mean a lot of rework, which will cost you a lot of money and a lot of time. For organizations looking to complete their own scanning projects, we recommend completing a clear and thorough plan. Not only do you need to know who is going to scan, but where are they scanning to? What folder structure do they need? What naming convention are you going to use? What metadata do you need to capture? What will you do with the physical records after the fact? Do you have the space to complete a scanning project? Prepping a document takes, typically we have a 6-foot table for each individual working because they need to have a place to spread out and be able to prepare those documents. And then you need room for the scanner, and then you need room for your validation processes. Do you have the right resources? Do you have a scanner that has the software or is able to complete a higher speed scan? Do you have the right people for the research, for the job? Make sure you have, just going back to space. We found doing a scanning project off the side of your desk is a surefire way to have errors and lose information. So not only do you need the scanning and the audit capabilities, but the person completing the task has to have the level of attention to detail to get the job done right. We have found not everybody is a records clerk. It is a very specific skill set to have the attention to detail for those long periods of time, to do that repetitive work for those long periods of time and still be able to produce strong results. So having someone with a really bubbly personality who's really gung-ho, they are not a fit for this type of work. It needs to be someone who can really kind of zone in and focus on that work. You want to make sure, again, you're checking the regulations that you need to follow and that you have regular follow-ups, recommending doing extra audits, just check-ins to make sure that your project is going the way that you need it to go. What to avoid? I think a lot of organizations underestimate the complexity of doing a large scanning project. There's this image in your mind that you just take a box, kind of dump it in, and all of a sudden it's all scanned and named and perfect. But it is a big undertaking and a big amount of work. So doing it yourself, you want to make sure that you understand that what you're getting into and what it's going to require. Pushing for quick completion may mean steps get skipped and errors get ignored. We also see businesses scan their records and then it sits on a drive and the rest of the business continues to use the paper records and they don't do anything with the digitized work. Don't skip the post-project work of integrating with your RM system and archiving or destroying the original records so that you don't have two copies of the original or live source of truth. You want to make sure that you have a definitive source of truth for the work to continue on. All right. So vendor partnerships. So how do we identify the best partner to complete our project if we say we don't want to do it in-house? When you're selecting a vendor project for your digitization project, there are a number of things you should consider. If possible, have a clear idea of what your end goal is, and it will ensure you're on the same page in discussions for potential solutions. There are questions your vendor should be asking, things like what the size of the project is, what your timelines are, where the images are going to be stored, what the naming convention is, what the structure is, what metadata is required, what percentages of QA you want, what kind of security requirements do you have? Is your information so sensitive that it can't be done on a cloud-based? It has to be done on an in-house. Is there purging of records within your project that don't need to be scanned, so you want them to be destroyed? Will there be storage requirements after the fact? An experienced vendor will want to know as much as possible so that they can give you the most accurate quote possible. Things that you'll want to know, you'll want to make sure that they have references. Who have they done projects for before? Did they get a description of all the services that they provide? In the event that they come across a jacket of fiche or a roll of film in one of your boxes, will you get a phone call and then you have to find another vendor to be able to take care of those records and blend it into yours? And it's very important to read the fine print. We have found a number of organizations who've partnered with a vendor that has a lot of hidden fees or fees after the fact. So everything looks really great, and then they ask for a file back or they ask for a box back, and the prices are astronomical and they kind of get trapped. So something that you want to really double check and make sure that your vendor doesn't have a lot of the fine print and that you have a clear understanding of where your records are coming and going, and what that looks like for you. How long have they been in business? You don't want to just trust your most sensitive records to a fly-by-night organization. Where is the work being done? Is it going to be done, like I mentioned, on the cloud? Is it going to be done in-house? What does that look like for you? How are their staff vetted? So organizations bring in staff in different ways. I know for our staff, everyone gets a security, criminal background check. They do security non-disclosures. We do security training. We have sign-offs and ensure that there is no recording devices. The team are not allowed to have cell phones on the floor or anywhere near any of the work happening. How is your vendor protecting your work to make sure that your confidential information is remaining confidential? What is important to you when you partner with a business? And making sure that you're happy with that. Are you a shop local kind of person? Maybe price is always your bottom line. Maybe you like to see the names that you're familiar with and you've heard. Whatever decision, whatever you use to make that decision, you need to be comfortable with the organization or the vendor partner that you're choosing. You need to be comfortable with the contact, the person that you'll be dealing with as the project launches, because you may have a lot of interaction with them, especially at the initial onset of the project, just to make sure that everything is going in the direction that you're wanting to. And if it's someone that you don't want to talk to or don't want a phone call with, it's not going to be a good experience for you, and it could cause issues because some things might not get addressed. Partnering whenever possible. If there's a way for them to do an on-site walkthrough, that is so helpful for both organizations. It's just like if I asked you what size my office is, you can't tell that if you don't see it. So it's really important for the vendor to have a good understanding of the project requirements, and then you to know that they're quoting you on the actual project that's coming through, and then you won't be hit with any hidden or extra charges after the fact. And then if you're a remote area, or maybe the vendor is in a different city or town, sending a lot of pictures. I know we've dealt with some clients that are quite remote, and just ask them for tons of pictures to just get a good understanding of what we're looking for, what they're looking for support with. And ask what the process is if you're not satisfied with the quality. What do they do? How do they fix it? Is it an issue? And they should be able to speak to, if the quality issue isn't there, or you're not really satisfied with something, or something seems to be missing. All organizations should be able to speak to that and offer you solutions. Like, well, we've run into that before, and we were able to redo a quality check on everything, or whatever their process is, because every organization, every vendor will have situations where not everything went 100% correct, and it's how those situations are dealt with that will make sure that you're getting the result that you're looking for. So challenges to overcome when choosing a vendor partner is any kind of confusion or miscommunication of expectations for the project, non-alignment of expectations, miscommunication of directions, and then billing options as well. Some vendors prefer to bill up front, some bill afterwards, some have extra charges that you weren't expecting. So very, very important for you to make sure that you are prepared for all the things that will go right and could run into some roadblocks. All right. So now what? You've digitized all your records. You have a mountain of data in your PDFs. So now what? There is so much insight and information about your business in your records. Being able to extract that information, make it malleable, consumable, is what's going to set you apart from your competition. And ensuring that you have OCR applied to your scanning, any of your digitization, especially your paper records, will help that process. I'm hoping in the future we can dive into, like in a future conversation, we can dive into a little bit of how AI can help transform your records. But for now, that is what I have for the process.
Thanks. Yeah, Shirley had her hand up. Do you want me to? I'll unmute Shirley if you want to ask your question. And then, well, she's coming on. What's your guidance on what to do the original documents with embossed seals once digitized? Is there a scan legal defensibility?
Embossed seals always do in color, because black and white does not do them justice. The legal expectation is once it's digitized and there's that audit trail, that becomes the source of truth in the original record. So you can destroy or archive that record, but that would be your permanent record.
Shirley, did you have a question?
Let me ask you a question, Liz, if you don't mind. Could you give us a little bit of kind of duel on what you find lately? I know years ago when we talked about digitizing documents, paper records, we got into this long discussion always about, okay, we're going to scan it. Are we going to keep the paper after we scan it? Are we going to destroy the paper? What's legally defensible? What isn't? Why would we do one versus the other? Can you give us a little bit of your expertise on that topic?
Yeah, so we have a lot of clients that are attached to their paper records. Once they get it digitized, they want it back and they put it back in their file room and they're using it. And again, that causes a bigger issue because someone may be using the digitized record as the source of truth. Someone may be using the paper record. So if there's another piece of information or record that goes into that file, you now have two sources. With the correct metadata, once it is scanned, once it is digitized, that then can and legally will become the source of truth. So it's usable, admissible in court. It's usable for whatever it needs to be. And you don't need that paper record. The paper records, most clients we recommend destroying because then you don't have the opportunity of using the file again and having that confusion. I know for our government clients, they typically archive for a set amount of time and then destroy, or we hold on site typically for most of our clients like three months, and then push forward with digitization or with destruction.
Okay. Do they give you as part of that discussion, does the client give you the authorization, say, look, we're not going to keep any of this once it's scanned? Or I know in days gone by too, some of the engineering associations in various provinces in the country, they had an issue about using the actual record for a drawing was signed and sealed paper. Like there was no electronic copy accepted, like you had to have that. I know, so in Alberta, that's changed, right? Obviously.
Yeah, as time has progressed, we're seeing more of adoption into digital format. And yeah, a lot of our clients will authorize us to destroy. Caveat, we always check like multiple times before we actually destroy. It's something that we want a lot of clarity on, and really that direction of we are good to destroy before we actually do.
I can understand that, Liz.
It's not just assume.
Absolutely understand that. That would be important. And I hate to be taking up space here. Like Troy's got some questions that people have sent in as well, but there's always a QC kind of question that comes up too. Is how much quality assurance do we do? What is the norm? What do we start with? Do we say 15%? Are we going to do 20%? Are we going to do 50? What percentage is kind of a norm for a normal a digitization project?
So the standard and the norm that we see is a 10% quality assurance. As I mentioned, I recommend, at least for your first box, even if you're doing it yourself, you want to have that 100% just to make sure. I'm always err on the side of caution. And I have a rule with our team: if our quality assurance team finds more than 2 issues in the quality check that they're doing, the entire box gets quality checked. And then if we're finding more than that, then the entire process gets paused, and we look at the process and look at where there's an issue. But 10%, we have some clients that it's 5%, but 10% is aligning with the CAN CGSB standards.
So just for everybody's anybody that doesn't know what CGSB is, because some people may not know that, CGSB stands for Canadian General Standards Board, and it's kind of a standard that we all use for these kinds of projects, to do with evidentiary value of the information that's been scanned.
Yeah, and I saw a question pop up about, is it 10% of the boxes or 10% of each box? And it would be each box. Each box typically holds about 2,000 pages of paper of records, and it would be about 200 pages that you would do that on. We usually do 2 or 3 batches out of the box to check.
Do you have any guidance for us, Liz, on just a kind of a number? Again, changes based on the kind of material you're scanning, but is there some kind of number, like say a good scanning operator can do 3 boxes a shift, or I mean, is there a kind of a number that you can use to do quick estimations of timing?
Of time? Yeah, absolutely. It depends on the type of scanner you have. So we have some higher speed scanners, but not the fastest in the business. So some scanners, the page per minute is lower. We find that it takes between 45 minutes and an hour and 15 minutes for one operator to do 1 box. And that's with the setup, check, and everything like that. Right. So if it's taking longer than that, is there a quality issue? Is there something going wrong? Sure. But again, the smaller scanners, like your little desktop ones, they're not going to have that speed, just because they won't be able to load as many pages at a time too. And
that's assuming, of course, that the box has been done properly from a prep standpoint before it even gets to the scanning operator as well. So how is that normally done, Liz? In order that getting things ready, how long does that take for a box of paper generally? Is it 2 people or 1 person, or how do you do that generally in a large scale project?
Generally for a project, so with the larger scale projects, it takes about 3 to 4 hours for a person to prep one of the boxes. That's inserting the patch sheets, making sure that the name of the files recorded, everything's ready to go. And then the scanning is about an hour. Your QC, or your QC indexing, that's about it can be half an hour, it can be 2 hours, depends. Actually, your QC will be probably about 2 hours. Your QA, that's the one that, depending on how much of the QA you're doing, it can be anywhere from half an hour to 2 or 3 hours if they're doing page by page.
Like a sliding scale, depending on what the rules are, right? Rules of the road.
Yeah, exactly. It is quite a manual process. So all in all, most of our boxes take between 7 and 11 hours per box of labor time. Files that require a lot of different folderization, ones that are in rougher shape. Those ones take longer. And then depending on how the box is packed, some people pack them so that they're the skinny, like the paper is going the skinny way. Those can have upwards of 3,500 pieces of paper in there. And that's of course going to take a lot longer because it's about 50% more images than a regular box.
Okay, there's quite a few questions here. Just as we're talking, can you go back
Nice.
to slide 9 while we go through a couple questions?
I think there
So,
was a slide that I had in there by accident, so I just skipped over it, and that was 9. So my apologies.
Oh, okay. Some people
Yeah.
are asking you, but okay.
Yeah.
So I'll go through a couple of the questions here. So what strategies do you suggest for a records manager who inherited a bunch of boxes marked scan, and you don't have any project documentation from the scanning project? So kind of, what do you do in those kinds of situations?
Very, very common for a records manager to walk into what we call a hot mess. I think from my perspective, I would want to validate. I would probably do random checks and a number of them to see if anything was in there, what's in the system, and really kind of almost like each box, take a look and validate that you can find that information. There's a chance that it was scanned and never saved into the right repository or never transferred. Like I mentioned, some organizations digitize and then it sits on a hard drive and who knows what happened to the hard drive. So it would be a lot of validation to make sure that the record is there, it's present. And then also there could be something that was marked on scanned that has been added to since it was deemed scanned. So there might be more information that is missing out of those files. So probably it's probably safer to assume that you're going to have a lot of work ahead of you. But yeah, it would be a lot of validation.
Okay, some questions here about dot matrix files. So we have some dot matrix files for our tax and assessments in our vaults from the 70s and 90s. Once those are scanned and verified, would the now digital record be able to replace the paper? And then a question around, the continuous dot matrix printing, how those are handled for scanning.
Yeah, so once it's digitized again, it is safe to become the new permanent record. And then as the dot matrix ink is fading and the paper is not caliber is fading, you have that record. We have done projects for dot matrix. Typically, we'll throw them on some of our oversized scanners because they can take that continuous paper. But there is kind of a limit of where can you have an end to that one group of pages that makes sense. But there is capability of scanning, and I think there are little scanners that are capable of scanning those types of papers, but even breaking them into breaks that make sense is a possibility. But yeah, we've had some that are a number of feet long that we've scanned.
So kind of in that same vein with certain types of files, with maps and drawings, does scanning capture the overall image, or can you pick up the finer details within the maps and drawings? Do you break those up as well?
Yeah, so when we do the oversized scanning, we typically grab the whole image. We're able to do some Photoshop and some image correction on the drawings to make sure that they're as crisp and clear as possible. From the digitized image, you can zoom in and you can choose to zoom it however you want. It makes it a lot more malleable and in that sense. So on your little screen, you'll be able to zoom in and see. But yeah, it really makes it you're able to play with it a lot more and access the information that you can.
So on the scanning side, with Fujitsu leaving the scanning market, do you recommend any high-speed alternatives?
So Fujitsu got bought by Ricoh. So they're still kind of out there in play. Our partner is Kodak. They're not going anywhere, and they have some really neat service or offerings that have capability of some data extraction too. So they have some really neat products coming on the market. Just something that you want, something that's not going to cost you a lot to maintain, that you don't have a lot of licenses, and not overbuying. So there's different levels of equipment that you can buy, and they can be hundreds of thousands of dollars. But really understanding the scope of your project and the needs of your project, probably don't need to spend a crazy amount of money unless you have millions of documents that you're scanning every year.
Shelley, did you have a question you wanted to ask? You allowed you to unmute there if you want to ask a question. While she does that, I'll ask another question here. And of course, this is going to come up in this kind of discussion. Are you getting requests for scanning because clients want better search capabilities? Is it coming up because people want to use the AI systems?
Yes. And then another one is real estate. It's really expensive. Like a storage room in an office building is really expensive, and that's a lot of real estate. A lot of organizations are choosing to decrease their footprint. A lot of are moving into smaller spaces, and they just don't have the space to store the records. I know a lot of organizations have been through incidents where they've had floods, fires, and all those records can be destroyed. So there's a safety component to it. But yeah, it's a lot. Most of the digitization is just for access. People, as they're learning about the capabilities of AI after it's digitized, that's where we're kind of starting to see a slow pivot, but not everybody's comfortable with the AI yet. And all the solutions are still kind of figuring out how they can better get that information and present it to clients.
Great. Shelley, do you want to ask a question? Maybe she's not there. That's okay. We'll
sorry, Troy. It's just I did again put my hand up by mistake.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Okay, let's keep going. There's a couple more questions here. Speaking of kind of the records in general, what are some of the high value records in an organization that people are generally scanning?
So every organization has payroll, employee HR files, and there are very specific requirements for retention around them. And every business has financial records. So those are typically the ones that we see every single organization having, because again, those are two that legally you have to be able to present and be able to come up with and have very specific retention. So when you're using your RM system, you can set retention schedules on it and have auto deletion, and that way you're not having to manage that day by day. And then from their organizations, it's whatever their business is. So like we do work with some consultant firms that are digitizing reports that are thousands of pages, and we do work with some government entities that are digitizing files of records that they have to retain for 100 years or 25 years based on the type of information in there. So those types of high value ones are there, but I'd say every organization has financial and HR records that need some kind of retention plan for them.
Are you hearing that too, Rick? The mic kind of messed up there a little bit. Elizabeth,
I'm hearing that too. Mm-hmm.
Oh, your mic just got a little muffled while you were talking there. We heard everything. It's just, no, that sounds better, I think there. Okay, well, one more question, or maybe two more questions here. You'd mentioned having to have more than one person in scanning project for legal compliance. Can you tell us where the legal requirements from? That goes back to the CSB compliance, I'm sure.
Yeah, it goes back to that and just the legal requirements from a court perspective. And it really focuses on, is the record, can it be proved that the record was not manipulated, or there's no risk at it being something happening to it to change what the record said. Primarily it's CGSB, but yeah, it's the legal rules as to why you want to make sure that that it is. I don't have on the top of my head the actual legalese of it, but yeah.
Actually, just kind of as a last question here, this is a good one to kind of wrap up with. Any advice on planning for long-term preservations now that you've actually digitized so what kind of digital formats for long-term preservation?
Yeah, I think it's best to go with programs and software like PDFs or ones that are not ones that are generally used. Anything that is very specific to a specific company or specific software, you can run into problems in the future. But that's why like Adobe PDFs are so popular, and the digitization, like the RM programs like SharePoint is going to be popular because everyone's going to have gone through that. Or enough people that that's going to be a go forward. So it's just not tying yourself to a very small or specific type of software or a specific type of image capture. So your JPEGs, your PDFs, like the big name brands ones that you know, those are the ones that you'll want to capture those records on, just so that they're going to be accessible in years to come.
Do you have any idea, Liz, on percentages just off the top of your head? Like a lot of the scanning applications used to come off in TIFF format, and clients kind of wanted, a lot of them wanted PDF. You got some kind of, is it, what percentage would you say your clients want PDF now, or PDFA, or some form of PDF document off the?
I'd say that 99% of our clients want PDF or PDFA. TIFF files, like when we scan them, they are TIFF files and we convert them. TIFF files take up a lot of space, so I think that's the barrier to having those. We do have some clients that want copies of both, and we're happy to provide that. And then something else that I forgot to mention, if you are using a third-party vendor, do ask the question of what they do with your records after they're done with them. So they should be retaining them for some amount of time, just in case they need to come back to them. But do they have a retention period? Do they have a destruction plan so that your records aren't with them for 20 years and they don't have access to that information as well? So that's something to keep in mind too.
Really good point.
Good. I think that's got through all the questions here. And if you want to wrap it up, Rick.
Yeah, thanks. Liz, thank you so much for your experience today in this presentation. It's one of those topics that we hear people talk about a lot, but it's rare to find people with a lot of industry experience in this whole topic of discussion, right? Where you can kind of off the top of your head give us information like this, expert information. So really appreciate you spending the time to do this today. And again, thanks Donna Malloy for helping to orchestrate this presentation. I think it's really important. For those of you on the session today, we do record the sessions, and Liz, you're okay with us putting that up, Liz, after the fact. And how about your slide deck? Would you be able to share that with us so we can put that up as well?
Absolutely, I'll send that off. And thank you everyone for your questions.
Yeah, everybody that's looking for that information will be able to find it on the Western IM website under blog, I think, Troy, community blog.
Events. Yeah, and events, blogs and events.
Events, yeah. So definitely you can find out. I thought there were some very useful slides in there for business case development too, Liz, that some of our people on the session today would like to have. So I think it's great. Thanks again. Much appreciated. Thanks, Troy, for being on the call. This was Troy's day off today. He was taking today off, but he came on to make sure we got the IM Canada Connect done properly. And thanks all of you for attending, and look forward to seeing you on our next session. Likely now it'll be September. Stay tuned for the IM Canada Connect session for September.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye, everybody.